10 rock deaths, everyone closed the same way: accidental, misadventure, overdose, unintentional. Case closed, everybody moves on, except the people who loved these musicians never moved on. Dig into the actual coroner's reports, and the same thing keeps showing up.
Tell me, why has she flown so far?
A detail that doesn't fit, a witness who changed their story, a number that's technically survivable but somehow wasn't. I'm not saying these were murders, but accident is a legal word. It's not the same thing as simple. Steve Clark, death 1991. Steve Clark is 30 years old, half of the Terror Twins. That's him and Phil Collen. The two guitarists who built the wall of harmonized riffs underneath Photograph and Pyromania. And here's what most casual fans never knew. By the time Hysteria made Def Leppard one of the biggest bands on the planet, Clark could barely function in the studio. The label of guitar hero and the reality of the man playing didn't match anymore. He'd been to rehab multiple times. He'd cracked a rib not long before he died, and a doctor told him, in plain language, "Don't drink on this pain medication." You know how that goes when somebody tells a rock star what not to do. He went out anyway, had drinks with a friend at a local pub, came home, fell asleep on the couch. Then here's what happened next. His girlfriend found him in the early hours, and he was gone. The autopsy took almost 2 months to come back, and when it did, it wasn't simple at all. 3 times the legal driving limit, mixed with Valium, codeine, and antidepressant. Respiratory failure from pressure on the brainstem. The coroner called it misadventure. No intent, they said. This wasn't a guy who didn't know his own limits. He'd been warned, specifically, days before, by a doctor. Ever watch someone you care about get the exact warning that should have saved them and ignore it anyway? You know that particular kind of helpless. It's not shock, it's grief, with the ending already spoiled. Def Leppard never replaced him. Phil Collen played all the guitar parts on the next record himself, because there wasn't another Terror Twin to call. 9. Kristen Pfaff, Holes, June 1994. Seattle is a city that is still, right now, in mourning. Kurt Cobain has been dead less than 10 weeks. And Kristen Pfaff, Holes bassist, is not doing what everyone assumes a rock casualty does next. She's doing the opposite. She's gotten clean. She's leaving the band. She's got a U-Haul packed and a friend named Paul Erickson coming to drive her home to Minneapolis, away from Seattle's drug scene entirely. You know that feeling of finally making the decision, the actual decision, not just the thought of it. She'd made it. She was 27. Classically trained on cello and piano before she ever touched a bass, and she was 2 days from being gone for good. Then Paul Erickson showed up to get her and found her in the bathtub instead. The medical examiner's office took almost a month on the toxicology before ruling it acute opiate intoxication. Accidental. Syringes and paraphernalia on the floor. No sign of foul play, they said clearly. I want to be straight with you about that, because there's a lot of noise online about this one, and the evidence doesn't support it. But here's what gets me. Her mother never accepted it. Pages were reportedly missing from Kristen's journal. And there's something genuinely brutal about dying from the exact thing you'd already beaten, on the exact trip meant to prove you'd beaten it. That's not a plot twist. That's just cruelty with bad timing. Some of y'all already know the next name on this list, because it's the same drug, the same decade of Seattle heartbreak, but a completely different kind of accident.
Let's look at the numbers. Only 9% of you are actually subscribed. Honestly, that's tough to see. Our team spends days hunting down archives and verifying every single fact just to tell these stories right. If you've made it this far into the video, you're clearly part of the community, so please hit subscribe. It costs nothing and helps us immensely. Now, for those already subscribed, very few of you have made the jump to our membership, and that's a hard pill to swallow because you're the ones who know our value best. If this channel has moved you or inspired you, consider joining. It's the price of one coffee, but it's the literal fuel for this channel. Let's keep this alive together. Back to the story.
8. Tim Buckley, 1975. And I want to be honest with you. Tim Buckley isn't always filed under rock. He's folk, he's jazz, he's this impossible 5-octave voice that critics still can't fully classify.
Broken love, Lord, on your
But strip away the genre argument and listen to what actually happened to him, because it might be the strangest death on this entire list.
amid your breakers.
He'd just wrapped a sold-out tour, best shows he'd played in years. He was, by every account from that final night, clean, not strung out. His own sound engineer said he turned down a joint that night, said he seemed sharp, together, present. Then he went home with an old friend, Richard Keeling.
From the sorrow.
And Keeling had heroin. Here's what most people miss. Buckley's body wasn't a using body anymore. He'd stepped back from it for months. And when your system stops expecting the poison, a dose that used to be manageable stops being manageable.
Waiting to hold you.
The coroner found no needle marks. He'd snorted it, and some investigators think he may have believed it was cocaine. His wife found him blue and not breathing a couple hours later.
My heart shies.
28 years old. I'd argue this is the most literal definition of accidental on the whole list, and it's also the one where a friend nearly went to prison for it.
And fingers drew me loving.
Richard Keeling was originally charged with second-degree murder for supplying the drugs, before it was reduced to involuntary manslaughter. Think about that phrase for a second. Manslaughter, for handing a friend something he'd taken 100 times before.
Here I am.
7. Bradley Nowell, Sublime, May 1996. Bradley Nowell married his longtime girlfriend Troy 1 week before this. He had an 11-month-old son named Jacob, and he had a self-titled album sitting in the can, finished, about to come out and turn Sublime, a scrappy ska punk band from Long Beach nobody outside Southern California had heard of, into a genuine phenomenon. He never heard What I Got hit #1. He never heard Santeria become a radio staple. He was gone 2 months before any of it happened. Here's the part that's genuinely hard to sit with. Nowell had tried to get clean specifically because of his son. He'd done it before, relapsed before, tried again. During the album sessions in Austin, his own producer had to send him home because the drug use had gotten so bad it was stalling the record. He came home, tried again, and on tour in San Francisco, in a motel room with his dog Lou Dog lying next to him, he shot up heroin that turned out to be stronger than what he was used to. His drummer Bud Gaw found him the next morning, said afterward he thought he was in hell. The ruling was straightforward. Heroin overdose, accidental, no mystery in the mechanism. But here's the truth underneath it. He'd built a family specifically as a reason to stop, and the thing he was trying to outrun got him 7 days after his wedding anyway. Some of y'all have watched someone try that exact thing, get married, have the kid, tell themselves this time it's different, and you know that hope is real even when it doesn't win. That's not a weakness in him. That's just how addiction works. It doesn't care what you're fighting for, and whether the industry could have caught it sooner, given how visibly it was unraveling in that studio. I'll let you sit with that one yourself. 6. Randy Rhoads, Ozzy Osbourne's band. March 19th, 1982. And stay with me on this one, because it's one of the strangest chains of decisions in rock history. Randy Rhoads was 25. He'd already transformed Ozzy Osbourne's solo career after Ozzy got fired from Black Sabbath, Crazy Train, Mr. Crowley, a genuinely new style of neoclassical metal guitar that a generation of players would spend decades trying to copy. He was also, by most accounts, scared of flying. The tour bus had stopped for repairs near a small private airstrip in Leesburg, Florida. The bus driver, a man named Andrew Aycock, who also happened to be a former pilot, decided to take a small plane up for a joyride. His license had actually expired. Nobody on that bus knew that. Aycock buzzed the tour bus. Not once, 5 or 6 times, trying to wake up the drummer who was still asleep inside. On what should have been just another pass, the wing clipped the bus, tore through it, and sent the plane cartwheeling into a nearby house. Rhoads had reportedly only gotten on that plane to take photos for his mother. Here's what nobody expects. This wasn't Aycock's first fatal crash. He'd been involved in one before, years earlier, and some around the band knew it, but Randy didn't. On paper, it shouldn't have happened. A guitarist afraid of flying, talked into one last ride, by a pilot who wasn't even legally allowed to be in that cockpit. The NTSB ruled it pilot error, accidental. Ozzy Osbourne carried the guilt of that morning for the rest of his life. And that's a different kind of loss than the others on this list. Not addiction, not a slow unraveling anybody saw coming, just a 5-minute decision on an ordinary tour stop that erased one of the most promising guitarists of his generation. The next 4 names on this list share something specific. They didn't just die of excess. They died in the exact rooms rock and roll was supposed to protect them in, backstage, at home, surrounded by the people who loved them, and somehow that's what makes each one hurt worse. Five, Dennis Wilson, The Beach Boys. December 28th, 1983. Dennis Wilson is the actual surfer in the band that made surfing a national mythology. The only Beach Boy who really rode waves, while his brothers wrote songs about a California they mostly imagined from a garage in Hawthorne. 3 days earlier, on Christmas, he'd checked himself out of a detox facility. Got into a drunken fight. The head of the treatment program had essentially written him off. Too much trouble, is what he reportedly said. And if you've ever watched someone spiral in a way that everyone around them can see coming and nobody can stop, you know how that particular helplessness sits in your chest. On the 28th, he was out drinking on a friend's boat in Marina del Rey. Blood alcohol at 26. More than 3 times the legal limit. He put on a face mask, jumped into the harbor to dive for old chairs and junk, something he'd apparently done there before as a kind of game. He didn't come back up. The coroner ruled it accidental drowning. Straightforward, on paper. But here's the detail that lingers. This was a man who grew up in the water, who genuinely loved the ocean more than almost anything else in his life, dying in 12 feet of it, in a marina he knew, doing something playful.
Lonely nights thinking it's starting to see.
Sometimes the thing you love the most is exactly what gets you, and there's no twist in that, just irony, plain and cold. He was buried at sea, by special Coast Guard authorization.
Out of my mind, she's gone away.
Ronald Reagan personally intervened to make it happen, since burials at sea were usually reserved for military veterans. The ocean that made the Beach Boys famous took one of them back for good.
Been happy in here alone.
Up next is a death that's been called an accident for almost 50 years, and the man who died from it had literally been given a drug to keep him alive.
I never told her how I
4. Keith Moon, The Who. September 7th, 1978. Moon the Loon, the drummer who drove cars into swimming pools, blew up drum kits, and lived like every night was the last one he'd get. And here's what most people never knew. The night he actually died, he was, by every account, having a good night. He'd been at a Paul McCartney party, told friends about his plans to get married, barely drank the champagne. He went home around 4 a.m. with his girlfriend Annette, took his prescribed heminevrin, a sedative meant to control his alcohol cravings, and went to sleep. Woke up a few hours later, argued with her, took more, went back to sleep. Heminevrin, in the doses he was taking, suppressed the body's natural gag reflex. It's the same drug prescribed to protect him from alcoholism that ultimately shut down the mechanism that would have saved him. He didn't die from drinking that night. He died from a medication meant to stop him from drinking, taken in the exact reckless handfuls he took everything else in his life. 26 undissolved tablets were found still in his stomach. The coroner's verdict was almost apologetically specific. Self-administered overdose, but no evidence of intention. Open verdict. Technically, though it's remembered as accidental. He was 32. And here's the detail that always gets me. The apartment he died in was the same building where Mama Cass Elliott had died 4 years earlier. Two rock deaths, same address, 4 years apart. What do you do with a coincidence like that? Nothing, really. You just notice it, and it stays with you. 3. John Bonham, Led Zeppelin. September 25th, 1980. If you know anything about drumming, you know the name before you know the story. Bonham is still the drummer other drummers measure themselves against. Led Zeppelin was rehearsing for an American tour. Everything on paper was fine, business as usual. Bonham started drinking early that day at Jimmy Page's house and didn't stop. By the time it was over, he'd had roughly 40 units of vodka across about 12 hours, a number that on its own is almost impossible to process.
A big-leg woman ain't got no soul.
Assistants put him to bed on his side specifically because they were worried. That precaution should have been enough. It wasn't. Bassist John Paul Jones found him the next morning, and he was gone, choked on his own vomit in his sleep. The inquest found he had 3 times the legal driving limit of alcohol in his system. Coroner's ruling, accidental death. Here's the thing about that era of rock. This is the second drummer on this list, after Keith Moon, to die exactly the same way, within 2 years of each other. And the band's response wasn't to find a replacement. Led Zeppelin looked at losing Bonham and simply decided the band was over. No auditions, no new drummer, no attempt to keep the machine running. If you've ever been part of something you built with people you trusted and watched it end the second one piece was gone, not from betrayal, just because that piece was actually load-bearing, you know that particular kind of finality. Some losses aren't repairable, they're structural. I'd argue Bonham's death is the cleanest accident on this entire list, medically speaking. And it's still one of the hardest to watch happen, because every single person in that house knew exactly how much he'd had, and put him to bed anyway, thinking it would be enough.
Tell me no lies, make me a happy man.
2. Bon Scott, AC/DC. February 19th, 1980. Ronald Belford Scott, Bon, was 33, and already something close to a rock and roll folk hero. A prodigious drinker, even by the standards of a genre built on prodigious drinking. AC/DC had just broken through commercially with Highway to Hell. Everything was about to get bigger. He went out that night to the Music Machine in London with a friend named Alistair Kinnear. Drank heavily, as usual. Kinnear drove him home, but couldn't wake him up to get him inside, so he laid the seat back, covered him with a blanket, left a note, and went to bed himself. He didn't check on him again until the following evening. By then, Scott had been sitting in that car for almost a full day. Here's what most people never clock. Bon Scott had a documented extraordinary tolerance for alcohol. Biographers who've studied the case have pointed out that the amount found in his system, while high, wasn't automatically fatal for a man of his experience level. The coroner's official cause was acute alcohol poisoning, ruled death by misadventure, asphyxiation on his own vomit, while unconscious in that cramped back seat. And here's what's stranger still. Alistair Kinnear largely vanished from the rock world afterward. His flat was reportedly cleared out by unknown parties not long after. None of that proves anything sinister. I want to be honest with you about that. But it's exactly the kind of loose thread that keeps a story like this alive 50 years later. Malcolm and Angus Young had to decide, within days of losing their frontman, whether AC/DC even continued to exist. They chose to keep going, brought in Brian Johnson, and released Back in Black, one of the best-selling albums of all time, as a direct answer to that grief. Some of you already know exactly which side of the should they have continued debate you're on. I already know the comments are going to be split, which brings us to number 1. The death that's been called an accident for over 50 years, investigated twice more after the original inquest, and still isn't settled in the minds of the people who were actually there that night. 1. Brian Jones, The Rolling Stones. July 3rd, 1969. Less than a month before this, Brian Jones, the founder of the Rolling Stones, the man who named the band, the one who was the most famous Stone before Jagger and Richards ever wrote a song together, had been fired from the group he started. Drug convictions had made him a liability. His playing had deteriorated. Mick and Keith pushed him out. Weeks later, he's dead in the swimming pool at his own home, Cochford Farm, a house that used to belong to the author of Winnie the Pooh, of all things. Here's the setup most people skip past. Brian Jones was by every account a strong swimmer. That night, there was a party at the house. A builder named Frank Thorogood, who'd been staying there doing renovations, was reportedly in a financial dispute with Jones that very day.
not foresee this thing happening to you.
At some point after midnight, Jones went into the pool. He didn't come out. The autopsy found fresh water in his lungs, but Cotchford Farm also had a trough of fresh water separate from the pool, and some of Jones's friends have long believed that detail points somewhere the official story never went. His blood alcohol was measured at roughly 3 pints of beer, not nothing. But for a man with his reputation, not remotely enough to explain a strong swimmer drowning in his own pool. The coroner's ruling was death by misadventure, drowning while under the influence of drink and drugs. Case closed, officially that same summer, except it never actually closed.
And I want it painted black.
Sussex police reviewed the case again in 1984, again in 1994. Journalists have spent decades on it. In 2010, a formal request to reopen the investigation was submitted and denied, police stating plainly that no new evidence had emerged to overturn the original verdict.
Anymore, I want them to turn black.
50 years after his death, Jones's daughter, who didn't even learn her father's identity until she was an adult, has said publicly that she believes he was killed.
And my love both never to come back.
Want to know the strangest part? 2 years later, to the exact day, July 3rd, Jim Morrison died in a Paris bathtub. Two of the most mythologized deaths in rock history, on the same calendar date, 2 years apart. I don't know what to do with that fact except hand it to you. This one hurts more than the others on this list, at least to me, not because the mystery is more dramatic, but because it's had 50-plus years and multiple official reviews, and it still isn't resolved. Every other name on this countdown got a clean, if tragic, medical explanation. Brian Jones got a verdict that the people closest to him have never actually believed.